The long table at the upscale restaurant remained empty, surrounded only by deflated congratulatory balloons drooping from their strings. I checked my phone again. 2 hours had passed, and not a single person from my company had shown up. Then the message appeared, making my heart clench. My entire department was gathered at another party, raising their glasses together, toasting the person who had stolen everything from me. My name is Elena Marlowe, and at 29, I'd just achieved what I'd been working toward my entire adult life: a senior research director position at Helixion Materials, one of the most innovative companies in sustainable technology. The promotion announcement had come that morning, accompanied by my boss Richard's enthusiastic suggestion that we celebrate properly. "Book somewhere nice, Elena. This is huge. The whole team should be there," he'd said, clasping my shoulder with what seemed like genuine pride. Now, sitting alone in the private dining room I'd reserved at Meridian, the kind of place where water comes in crystal decanters and the cheapest entree costs more than most people's weekly groceries, I felt like a fool. The table settings for 20 mocked me with their pristine emptiness. The champagne I'd pre-ordered sat unopened in silver buckets, beading with condensation. I refreshed my phone for the 100th time. The work group chat was silent, but Instagram told a different story. There was Marissa, my supposed best friend at work, clinking glasses in someone's living room. Behind her, I could make out Tom from engineering, Sarah from quality control, even Richard himself, tie loosened, laughing at something off camera. The geotag read Ethan's place. Ethan Cross. Of course. My hands trembled as I zoomed in on the photos, searching faces. Every single person I'd invited was there. The cake on the table wasn't for me. The gold lettering read, "Congratulations to our star," with Ethan's smiling face printed on the frosting. The project they were celebrating, the breakthrough in converting plastic waste to ultra-durable building materials, was mine. Every calculation, every late night in the lab, every failed experiment that led to the final success, all mine. The waitress approached for the third time, her expression shifting from professional patience to genuine pity. "Would you like to wait a bit longer, or should we?" "Give me 5 more minutes," I heard myself say, though we both knew no one was coming. I scrolled through the messages I'd sent that afternoon, read receipts on every single one. Marissa had even responded with a thumbs-up emoji and "can't wait." That was 4 hours ago. The cruelty of it was surgical in its precision. They'd all coordinated this humiliation. Another notification popped up. Ethan had tagged me in a post. "Grateful for all the support from the team, especially those who provided the foundation for tonight's success. You know who you are. Teamwork. Moving up." The comments were already flooding in. Congratulations from industry contacts, clients, even members of the board. People who should have been acknowledging my work were praising him for innovation that had come from my brain, my hands, my years of expertise. I stood up, leaving $500 bills on the table, enough to cover the cancellation and a generous tip for the waitress who'd witnessed my humiliation. As I walked out, my heels clicking against the marble floor, my phone buzzed again. This time it was from HR, marked urgent. "Elena, we need to discuss serious discrepancies in the investor presentation materials immediately. Please report to the office as soon as possible." The cold December air hit my face as I stepped outside. Through the restaurant window, I could see the waitstaff already clearing the untouched place settings, folding away the physical evidence of my foolishness. But something had shifted inside me. The tears I'd expected never came. Instead, there was something harder, sharper. A crystalline clarity that comes when you finally see exactly where you stand. They thought they'd broken me tonight. They thought I'd crumble, maybe quit. Certainly never challenge Ethan's stolen glory. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'd grown up in foster homes where I'd learned to sleep with one eye open. I'd clawed my way through MIT on scholarships and sheer determination. I'd solved problems that senior scientists twice my age had declared impossible. If they wanted a war, they'd just fired the first shot. But I would finish it. I wasn't always alone. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7, a drunk driver on a rainy night in Ohio. No relatives wanted another mouth to feed. So I bounced between foster homes for the next 11 years. While other kids complained about homework, I buried myself in textbooks. Science didn't lie. Mathematics didn't betray. Chemical reactions followed predictable patterns. Unlike people, the scholarship to MIT felt like divine intervention. I worked 3 jobs to cover what financial aid didn't, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and stubbornness. My professors called me brilliant but difficult. I called myself focused. When you've got no safety net, you can't afford to be anything else. Heliction Materials recruited me straight from my PhD program 5 years ago. They were on the cutting edge of environmental technology, promising to revolutionize how we handle plastic waste. The science was intoxicating. Imagine turning the Great Pacific Garbage Patch into housing materials stronger than steel but flexible enough to withstand earthquakes. I signed immediately. My first day, Richard assigned Marissa as my mentor. She was everything I wasn't: warm, chatty, someone who remembered birthdays and organized coffee runs. "You need to loosen up, Elena," she'd say, dragging me to happy hours I'd rather skip. Science is a team sport here. I thought she was teaching me to fit in. Looking back, she was studying me like a specimen, cataloging weaknesses. Ethan arrived 2 years after me, all gleaming teeth and firm handshakes. While I presented data in precise monotones, he painted visions. Where I said polyethylene terephthalate degradation through enzymatic processes, he said, imagine a world where every piece of trash becomes treasure. The executives ate it up. But his actual lab work? Mediocre at best. His calculations often had errors a first-year student would catch. "You're too rigid," Richard told me during my last performance review. "Ethan understands the bigger picture. You need to think beyond the microscope." The bigger picture. Like when Ethan suggested we collaborate on the polymer stabilization project. I did the work, 18 months of trial and error, adjusting molecular structures atom by atom until I found the perfect balance. Ethan did the presentations, slowly shifting from Elena discovered to we discovered to I discovered. I documented everything, thinking data would speak for itself. Marissa watched it happen. More than watched, enabled it. "Don't be so possessive," she'd counsel over lunch. "Ethan's just enthusiastic. He gives you credit." Did he? I started recording our meetings, keeping meticulous notes. She called me paranoid. "This isn't healthy, Elena. You're becoming obsessed." Was I? When you've built your entire identity on being smarter, working harder, proving yourself worthy of existing in spaces that barely tolerate you, maybe obsession is just another word for survival. I didn't have Ethan's country club connections or Marissa's emotional intelligence. I had my brain and my work ethic. The breakthrough came 3 months ago. A single % adjustment in the catalyst concentration, discovered at 2 a.m. on a Sunday when the lab was empty except for me and the humming of machines. The resulting material was everything we'd dreamed: stable, strong, cost-effective. I ran the test 16 times to be sure, then locked the formula in my personal files, encrypted and backed up in 3 locations. I made one mistake. I trusted Marissa enough to share my initial excitement. We celebrated with champagne from a vending machine, sitting on the lab floor as dawn broke through the windows. "This is it, Elena," she said, eyes shining. "This changes everything." She was right, just not in the way I expected. The next week, Ethan suddenly became very interested in my work. Richard scheduled meetings where Ethan would ask probing questions while Marissa took notes. "For the investment presentation," they said, "we need to make sure everyone understands the full scope." I should have seen it then, the way Marissa's eyes wouldn't meet mine. How Ethan's questions grew more specific. How Richard started referring to it as the team's discovery. But I was too close to the finish line, too focused on perfecting the final trials to notice the ground shifting beneath my feet. The HR message burned on my phone screen as I sat in my car outside the restaurant. Engine running, heat blasting against the December cold. My hands had finally stopped shaking, replaced by an eerie calm that felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. I called the HR director, Patricia Stern. She answered on the first ring, despite it being nearly 10 p.m. Elena, thank God. Where are you? Leaving Meridian. What's wrong? The investor presentation tomorrow. Kleiner Ventures just had their technical team review our materials. They're threatening to pull out. The stability data doesn't match the prototype results. The formulas are wrong. Elena, completely wrong. My blood chilled. Which formulas? The ones in the master presentation file. The ones with your digital signature from this afternoon. I didn't sign anything this afternoon. I was preparing for... I stopped. While I'd been setting up my pathetic celebration, someone had been in the system. Can you come in now? The board is here. If we lose Kleiner's $40 million, the entire sustainable materials division gets shuttered. 5 years of work, gone. I shifted into drive. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The Heliction building blazed with light, unusual for a Friday night. Security waved me through without the usual badge check. Clearly, everyone knew about the crisis. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt both endless and too quick. I needed time to think, to process what was happening. The conference room was chaos. Board members hunched over laptops, Richard pacing by the windows, Patricia shuffling papers with barely controlled panic. And there, in the corner like he'd just happened to drop by, stood Ethan. His party clothes, the same ones from Instagram, looked deliberately casual among the emergency response team. Elena, Richard spotted me first. Thank God. We need you to explain these numbers. On the main screen was my presentation, except it wasn't. The molecular structures were subtly wrong. A hydrogen bond here, a carbon chain there. To a layperson, even to most chemists, it would look legitimate. But, implemented, these formulas would create a material that would degrade within months, not last for decades. This isn't my work, I said flatly. Ethan stepped forward. Elena, I know you're under stress with the promotion, but pull up the file history. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. It shows you logged in at 3:47 p.m. today, made these changes, and submitted the final version. I was at Meridian at 3:47, waiting for my guests. I pulled out my phone, showed them the receipt, time-stamped 3:15. Check the security footage. Security cameras were down for maintenance this afternoon, Ethan said smoothly. Building-wide update. Of course they were. Board member David Knox, a man who'd built his fortune on seeing through bullshit, leaned forward. Miss Marlowe, if these aren't the correct formulas, where are they? This was it. The moment where I could either play their game or flip the board. In my personal encrypted files, the real formula, the one that actually works, is secured with biometric authentication. I can show you the test results, the trial data, everything. But first, I want to know how my credentials were used when I wasn't in the building. That's a serious accusation, Richard said. It's a serious situation. We're about to lose $40 million because someone replaced my work with garbage designed to fail. I turned to the board. The question is, who benefits from Heliction's failure? Ethan's jaw tightened. Elena, we're all on the same team here. Are we? Then why were you all toasting your promotion at your apartment while I sat alone at the restaurant you all confirmed you'd attend? The room went silent. Patricia looked between us, pieces clicking together. Your promotion? She asked Ethan. What promotion? It's not official, Richard said quickly. Too quickly. I smiled, the kind of smile I'd learned in foster care when the house parents were lying about where the donation money went. Let me guess, if this presentation failed, if I was blamed for costing the company millions, there would be an opening for a new research director, someone who's been positioning himself as the visionary leader, someone who's been taking credit for breakthrough discoveries he didn't make. You're being paranoid, Ethan said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Then you won't mind if we check your computer for traces of the false data? Or ask Marissa about the files she was copying from my workstation yesterday? I have footage of that, by the way. My personal security camera, the one I installed after my research started mysteriously appearing in other people's reports. The board members exchanged glances. David Knox stood up. Miss Marlowe, can you fix this presentation tonight? I can have the correct data ready in 30 minutes. Do it, Mr. Cross, Mr. Richardson, Ms. Stern, stay here. We need to discuss what exactly happened today. And someone get Marissa Chen on the phone immediately. As I walked to my lab, I heard Ethan's voice rising in protest, Richard's stammering explanations, Patricia's cold professional tone taking statements. The hunter had become the hunted, and he didn't even realize yet how much evidence I'd been collecting. The war had begun, and I'd just won the first battle. The lab felt different at night, cathedral quiet, with only the hum of refrigeration units and the occasional beep of equipment on standby. I worked quickly, pulling up my encrypted files, entering biometric scans, retrieving the real data that could save Helixian's future. But my mind was elsewhere, processing what I'd just set in motion. 28 minutes later, I returned to the conference room with a USB drive and my laptop. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Marissa sat at the far end of the table, her party dress wrinkled, makeup smeared from crying. Ethan stood by the window, arms crossed, his usual swagger deflated. Richard wouldn't meet my eyes. The correct presentation, I announced, plugging in the drive. The screen filled with the actual molecular structures, stability data, and test results. 18 months of meticulous work displayed in pristine detail. David Knox studied the data intently. Walk us through this, Miss Marlowe, slowly. I began my explanation, the same one I'd rehearsed for weeks, but never got to deliver. The board members leaned forward, asking sharp questions that I answered with precision. This was my element, pure science, no politics, just facts. The key innovation, I explained, is the catalytic conversion rate. We're achieving 94% efficiency in transforming polyethylene waste into our building material, with a tensile strength exceeding 350 points in Pool A. And the false data? Knox asked. What would have happened if we'd presented that? Catastrophic failure within 6 months? Lawsuits? Complete loss of credibility. I clicked to my analysis of the sabotaged formulas. Whoever created this knew enough chemistry to make it look plausible, but deliberately introduced fatal flaws. I can explain, Ethan started. No need. Patricia interrupted, laptop open. I just sent their preliminary report. The login credentials used to modify Elena's files originated from your workstation. Ethan, your keycard accessed the server room during the maintenance window when cameras were down. Maintenance you scheduled. That doesn't prove. And Marissa's computer shows she forwarded Elena's encrypted files to your personal email 2 weeks ago, along with attempts to crack the encryption using software downloaded from... Patricia paused. Let's just say sources that violate company policy and possibly federal law. Marissa broke. He said Elena was leaving, that she had another job lined up and was going to take the research with her. He said we were protecting the company. I almost admired the lie's elegance. Paint me as the traitor, justify the theft as loyalty. Did you verify this claim? Knox asked Marissa. Ethan showed me emails. Fabricated emails, Patricia confirmed. I traced them. Created on Ethan's machine, never sent through our actual email system. The full scope was emerging. While I'd been documenting individual incidents, Ethan had been orchestrating a complete character assassination. The missed meetings he'd told me were canceled. The reports submitted under his name that I'd written. The casual comments to executives about my difficult personality. All purposeful, all planned. There's more, I said quietly. Everyone turned to me. Check the patent filings. Patricia's typing accelerated. Her face went pale. There's a provisional patent application filed yesterday, under Ethan Cross's name, for the polymer stabilization process. That's impossible, Richard said. Legal would never. It wasn't filed through company channels. Patricia continued. It's a personal filing. He was planning to claim the invention independently, then license it back to Helixian, or... or sell it to a competitor. Knox finished. Mr. Richardson, were you aware of any of this? Richard's face was ashen. Ethan said Elena was brilliant but unstable, that she needed someone to manage her work, present it properly. I thought I was helping her by letting him steal from her. Knox's voice could have frozen helium. I want to make something clear, I said, standing. This isn't just about me. Check the department records. How many junior researchers, particularly women, have left in the past 2 years? How many projects have been consolidated under Ethan's leadership? I'm just the first one with enough evidence to fight back. Patricia was already pulling records. 7 researchers transferred or resigned. 3 projects reassigned to Ethan after the original leads left for personal reasons. The pattern was clear. I wasn't special. I was just the one who'd refused to break. Mr. Cross, Knox said, you're suspended immediately pending full investigation. Security will escort you out. Ms. Torres, same for you. Mr. Richardson, we'll discuss your future tomorrow. You can't, Ethan started. Actually, we can. Another board member interrupted. Attempted theft of intellectual property, fraud, industrial espionage. You're looking at criminal charges, not just termination. As security arrived, Ethan shot me a look of pure venom. You think you've won? You have no idea how this industry works. You'll never. Mr. Cross. Knox cut him off. I'd advise you to stop talking. Anything you say now will be documented for the legal proceedings. They let him out. Marissa trailing behind, her betrayal for nothing written in every stumbling step. Richard sank into a chair, his career imploding in real time. Miss Marlowe, Knox addressed me. Can you present to Kleiner tomorrow? Yes. Good. Patricia, arrange security for Miss Marlowe's files and research. I want everything backed up and protected immediately. He turned back to me. We owe you an apology. This organization failed you. I nodded, accepting the words but knowing they changed nothing about what I'd endured. The room began to clear. Board members murmuring about damage control and legal strategies. As I gathered my materials, Knox approached. That was impressive. Not just the science, the way you handled this. Ever consider moving into leadership? I just want to do my work, I said. Think about it. Helixion needs people like you. People who see clearly. Alone in the conference room, I looked at the empty chairs where my colleagues had sat, plotting against me while I'd waited at a restaurant with wilting balloons. The victory felt hollow, but also inevitable. They'd underestimated the foster kid who'd learned to document everything, trust no one completely, and always have a backup plan. Tomorrow, I'd present to Kleiner. Tonight, I had won. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I returned to my lab, my real home, where everything made sense. The adrenaline from the confrontation was wearing off, replaced by a cold, calculating focus. They thought this was over. They were wrong. I pulled up my personal laptop, the one IT didn't know about, connected through a VPN that masked my activities. Over the past 6 months, I'd been meticulous. Every email Ethan sent taking credit for my work, archived. Every meeting where Richard dismissed my concerns, recorded on my phone. Every time Marissa accessed my files, logged through a monitoring program I'd installed after the first suspicious incident. But documentation wasn't enough. Not anymore. The board might have suspended Ethan and Marissa, but I knew how these things worked. A few months of paid leave, a quiet settlement, and they'd resurface at another company, ready to prey on the next talented researcher too focused on science to see the knife coming. No. This needed to be thorough. I started with the patent filing. Ethan had made a crucial mistake. He'd filed it independently, which meant he'd committed fraud not just against me, but against Helixion. The company owned all research developed using their resources. His greed had given me the perfect weapon. Next, I compiled what I called the pattern, A comprehensive timeline showing how Ethan's rise correlated with the systematic departure of talented researchers. Email threads where he questioned female colleagues' emotional stability. Performance reviews where he suggested certain people weren't leadership material despite their superior output. The lawsuit would write itself. At 3 a.m., Patricia Stern walked into my lab with 2 cups of coffee and a grim expression. "You're building a case," she said. It wasn't a question. "I'm protecting future researchers." She sat down, sliding 1 coffee across the bench. "I've been doing my own digging. Ethan's previous employer, Synthesis Corp., 3 researchers filed complaints before he left. All women. All settled out of court with NDAs. You have contacts there?" "I have contacts everywhere." She pulled out a tablet. Richard knew. He hired Ethan anyway because his sales projections were impressive. The coffee tasted bitter, or maybe that was just the truth. "Of course he did. The board is meeting at 7. Knox wants you there." "To present the Kleiner data?" "To discuss the future of the research division. Richard is out, that's decided. They're considering you for the position." I looked up sharply. "I'm 29. I've been here 5 years. You also just saved the company $40 million and exposed a massive fraud. Age becomes irrelevant when you're the only person who understands the technology." She paused. "But there's something else. Ethan's lawyer has already reached out. He's claiming you set him up, that you deliberately created false data to frame him." I laughed, a harsh sound in the sterile lab. "With what evidence?" "He says you've been stalking him, that you have an unhealthy obsession with him. He's painting you as a rejected woman seeking revenge. The oldest playbook in the world. Discredit the woman by making it about spurned affection rather than stolen achievement. Good thing I have everything documented. Then..." Patricia smiled for the first time. "That's why I'm here. Legal wants to go full offensive, criminal charges, civil suit, the works. But they need your complete cooperation. Every file, every recording, everything." I thought about the foster homes where keeping quiet meant survival. The years of being told I was too intense, too focused, too difficult. Every time I'd been asked to smile more, speak softer, be less threatening in my competence. "They'll destroy my reputation," I said. "They'll try. But Knox has already lined up a PR firm. We're controlling the narrative. Brilliant female scientist exposes systemic fraud, saves company. It writes itself. And if I say no, if I just want to do my work..." Patricia set down her coffee. "Then Ethan and others like him keep doing this. You got lucky. You had evidence. The next woman might not." She was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. "I have one condition," I said. "Full transparency. Every document related to this case gets released publicly after legal proceedings. No NDAs, no quiet settlements. Everyone should see exactly how this happened. That's unprecedented. So was what they did to me, and to the others before me." Patricia typed rapidly on her tablet. "I'll present it to the board." As dawn broke through the lab windows, I made a decision. The foster kid in me wanted to take the win and hide, to protect what I'd gained. But the scientist in me understood that some reactions, once started, had to run to completion. "Tell Knox I'll take the position," I said, "but I'm implementing new policies. Blind review for all research proposals, mandatory documentation of project contributions, protection protocols for junior researchers. You're going to change the entire culture. That's the point." Patricia stood to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Elena, I'm sorry I didn't see this sooner. You see it now, that's what matters." Alone again. I looked at my research, the formulas that had almost been stolen, the work that defined me. In a few hours, I'd present to Kleiner, secure the funding, and step into a role I'd never imagined. But first, I had a war to finish. I opened a new document and began typing. Evidence Index Cross et al. Versus Helixian Materials and Elena Marlowe. By the time I was done, there would be no corner dark enough for them to hide in. The boardroom at 7 a.m. felt like a different universe from the chaos of 12 hours ago. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating faces that had traded exhaustion for determination. David Knox sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members, and Patricia Stern. The chair where Richard usually sat remained pointedly empty. "Miss Marlowe," Knox began without preamble, "we've spent the night reviewing your documentation. It's comprehensive." I'd changed into the spare suit I kept in my office, but I still felt the weight of the sleepless night. "I believe in being thorough." An understatement. He slid a tablet across the table. "This shows systematic fraud going back 2 years. But what interests me more is this." He pulled up another document. "Your proposed restructuring of the research division." I'd sent it at 5 a.m., when the coffee was wearing off and pure conviction had taken over. A complete overhaul. Blind peer review. Contribution tracking systems. Mentorship programs with accountability metrics. And most radically, a researcher's Bill of Rights. "It's ambitious," another board member, Sandra Liu, said. "It would make us the most progressive research facility in the industry." "Or the most bureaucratic," countered James Brennan, the CFO. "These protection protocols will slow development." "Will they?" I challenged. 7 researchers left because of Ethan. Each took months of knowledge with them. Their replacements needed training. Projects stalled. How much did that slow development? How much did it cost? Patricia pulled up her analysis. Conservative estimate, 12 million in lost productivity over 2 years. That doesn't include potential innovations that walked out the door. More importantly, Knox interjected, Kleiner's technical team was impressed not just with the formula, but with Miss Marlowe's documentation standards. They specifically mentioned it as a factor in their confidence. Transparency has value. "Speaking of Kleiner," Lou said, "they've moved the presentation to 9. They want to meet the person behind the breakthrough, not a spokesperson." 2 hours. I could handle that. "There's another matter," Knox continued. "Ethan's attorney sent this an hour ago." The document on screen was a cease and desist, claiming I'd stolen his intellectual property and demanding I stop presenting his work. The audacity was breathtaking. "Our legal team is handling it," Patricia assured me, "but he's also gone to the media. TechCrunch has the story, his version, anyway." Promising executive framed by vindictive colleague. I felt the familiar rage, cold and clarifying. He's trying to poison the well before the truth comes out. "Which is why," Knox said, "we're accelerating our timeline. Sandra, are you ready?" Sandra Liu, whom I'd only known as the quiet board member who asked pointed questions, smiled. "My other role is managing partner at Liu Communications. We've prepared a counter-narrative." "Elena, are you comfortable being the face of this?" The foster kid in me screamed, "No. Stay quiet, stay safe, stay invisible." But invisibility was what had allowed this to happen. "What would that involve?" "Full transparency, as you requested. We release everything, the evidence, the pattern of behavior, the attempted patent theft. We position you not as a victim, but as a whistleblower who protected the company's integrity. And we announce your promotion simultaneously." Knox added, "Youngest research director in Helixian's history, revolutionary breakthrough, exposed massive fraud. It's a powerful narrative. You want to use me as a symbol. We want to make sure this never happens again." Knox corrected. "Your policies, your standards, your integrity, that becomes Helixian's brand." I thought about every late night in the lab, every dismissed concern, every moment I doubted myself when the problem wasn't my work, but the system around it. "I have conditions," I said. Brennan sighed. "Of course you do. First, the 7 researchers who left, we offer them positions to return, with back pay for their lost time. Second, Marissa and anyone else who was manipulated rather than willingly complicit gets the option of remediation rather than termination. Third, Richard doesn't get a golden parachute. He enabled this. Marissa betrayed you," Lou pointed out. "She was manipulated by someone who spent 2 years perfecting his technique. Yes, she made choices. But Ethan was the architect. I want justice, not revenge. The distinction mattered. Revenge was emotional, satisfying, but ultimately hollow. Justice was structural, changing systems so the next Elena wouldn't need to wage this war. Acceptable, Knox said after a long pause. Patricia, make it happen. The presentation to Kleiner? I asked. Is yours alone. No handlers, no script. Show them what real innovation looks like when it's not filtered through corporate theatrics. As the meeting adjourned, Knox held me back. You know Ethan won't stop. Men like him never do. He'll claim you seduced him, that you're unstable, that you falsified evidence. It's going to get ugly. Let him try. I have receipts for everything. Knox studied me with something that might have been admiration. You remind me of someone I knew decades ago. She fought similar battles, paid similar prices. She's the reason I pushed for this investigation instead of a quiet settlement. What happened to her? She founded her own company. It's worth $2 billion now. He stood to leave, then paused. Don't let them make you small, Elena. The world needs people who refuse to be diminished. As I prepared for the Kleiner presentation, I thought about all the moments that had led here. Every slight, every stolen idea, every gaslighting conversation that made me doubt my own experience. They'd shaped me into someone dangerous, not because I was vindictive, but because I was meticulous. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted. And for the first time, I had the high ground. The Kleiner presentation had gone flawlessly. By noon, news of their $40 million investment was public, along with my appointment as research director. The narrative was shifting, but Ethan wasn't going down quietly. I was in my new office, Richard's former space, now stripped of his golf trophies and motivational posters, when Patricia burst in. They're here, in the lobby, Ethan, his lawyer, and, she paused. A film crew. A film crew? Documentary filmmakers. He's claiming this is a case of corporate conspiracy against innovative leadership. He's literally trying to make himself the hero of his own scandal. I pulled up the security feed on my computer. There he was, designer suit, perfectly pressed, speaking earnestly to a camera while employees awkwardly navigated around the spectacle. He can't film on private property, I said. He's claiming wrongful termination, demanding access to retrieve personal items. Legal says we have to allow it, but we can restrict the filming. No! The word came out sharp and clear. Let him film. Patricia stared at me. Elena. He wants to control the narrative? Fine. Set up a company-wide meeting in the main auditorium. Mandatory attendance. Tell Ethan he's welcome to attend with his crew. That's insane. That's transparency. He wants to make accusations. Let him do it in front of everyone who actually works here. 2 hours later, the auditorium was packed. Ethan sat in the front row, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. The documentary crew had set up cameras, clearly thrilled at the unexpected access. I stood at the podium with a clicker and the most comprehensive PowerPoint presentation I'd ever created. Good afternoon, I began. As your new research director, I believe in complete transparency. So let's discuss what happened here. Click. The first slide showed my original polymer formula. Click. The corrupted version that would have cost us $40 million. Click. The IP logs showing Ethan's computer accessing my files. Click. The falsified emails claiming I was leaving. Click. The patent application in Ethan's name. I went through it all methodically, without emotion, letting the evidence speak. The room was silent except for the hum of cameras and occasional gasps as particularly damaging evidence appeared. Mr. Cross, I said, turning to face him directly. Would you like to explain to your colleagues, many of whom worked overtime to support what they thought was your project, how you plan to sell their work to our competitors? Ethan stood, his practiced smile intact. This is a witch hunt. Elena couldn't handle competition, so she fabricated, I clicked again. This is your login accessing the patent database. This is your credit card purchasing the encryption-breaking software. These are your emails to Marissa, coaching her on what to say. Those could be fake, which is why I insisted on forensic verification. Patricia stepped forward with a stack of documents. 3 independent firms have authenticated everything. Would you like to see their reports? Ethan's lawyer grabbed his arm, but he shook him off. You think you're so clever, but everyone here knows what you are, a cold, antisocial workaholic who can't handle normal human interaction. No wonder you were alone at that restaurant. There it was. The personal attack. The attempt to hurt me where he thought I was weakest. You're right, I said, and the room stirred in surprise. I am antisocial by your standards. I don't schmooze. I don't take credit for others' work. I don't manipulate junior researchers into giving up their innovations. If that's normal human interaction, then I'm proud to be abnormal. This company needs leaders who can inspire. Inspire? I laughed. Actually laughed. Let's talk about inspiration. Sarah Kim, would you stand up? A young researcher in the middle section stood nervously. Sarah's crystallization technique improved our process efficiency by 12%. Ethan, you presented it to the board last quarter. Did you mention her name? Sarah shook her head. Marcus Thompson, please stand. Another researcher rose. Marcus solved the temperature stability issue that had plagued us for years. Ethan, you filed that solution under your project reports. Did Marcus receive credit, recognition, even a thank you? More researchers began standing without being asked, a silent testimony to systematic theft. You inspired something, Ethan, I said. You inspired 7 brilliant minds to leave. You inspired a culture of fear where innovation was punished if it didn't flow through you. You inspired me to document everything because I knew eventually someone would have to stop you. His face had turned red, then purple. You destroyed my career. No, you did that yourself. I just refused to let you destroy mine. The documentary crew was capturing everything. This would air somewhere, eventually, and Ethan had invited them in. I'll sue, he snarled. I'll take everything. With what standing? Patricia interrupted. You committed fraud. You stole intellectual property. You attempted to sell trade secrets. The only reason you're not in handcuffs is because the FBI is still building their case. That was news to me, but I kept my face neutral. Ethan went pale. This meeting is over, I announced. Except for one thing. Effective immediately. All research contributions will be tracked in a blockchain-based system, immutable, transparent, and accessible. Never again will someone's work be stolen at Halixian. As the crowd dispersed, the documentary crew rushed toward Ethan, but he was already fleeing with his lawyer. They turned their cameras on me instead. Dr. Marlowe, how does it feel to have exposed such massive corruption? I looked directly into the lens. It feels like justice, and it's just the beginning. 6 months later, I stood in the same empty boardroom where everything had unraveled that December night. But this time, the emptiness was peaceful, not painful. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of amber that reminded me of successful polymerization under heat treatment, beauty and transformation. The legal proceedings had concluded last week. Ethan Cross, guilty of corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and fraud. 5 years federal prison, $10 million in restitution. His lawyer had tried everything: mental instability claims, romantic entanglement theories, even suggesting I'd planted evidence. None of it stuck. Documentation doesn't lie. Marissa had taken the remediation option, transferred to our Tokyo office. She'd sent one email. I'm sorry, I see it now. I didn't respond. Forgiveness would come eventually. But trust? Never again. Richard Richardson had quietly disappeared, his reputation in tatters. Last I heard, he was teaching business ethics at a community college in Montana. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but the real victory wasn't in their downfall. It was in what rose from the ashes. The 7 researchers who'd left had returned, bringing new ideas cultivated in their time away. Sarah Kim was leading her own team now. Marcus Thompson had 3 patents pending, all properly attributed. The blockchain system tracked every contribution, every innovation, every late-night breakthrough. My office door opened. David Knox entered with 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne. Real champagne. Not the vending machine variety Marissa and I had shared that fateful night. The Kleiner deal closed at $300 million, he said, pouring. They're calling your polymer the innovation of the decade. It's not just mine. The team is thriving under leadership that actually leads, he finished. Accept the compliment, Elena. We clinked glasses, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about the question seriously. The foster kid who'd learned to stay invisible would have handled everything differently, quietly, safely, without waves. But that girl had grown into someone who understood that silence is complicity, that documentation is power, and that justice requires courage. No, I said. No regrets. The documentary aired last night, 20 million views already. I'd watched it. They'd titled it The Whistleblower's Formula. It wasn't just about me, it had become a catalyst for conversations about corporate theft, gender dynamics in STEM, and the importance of protecting innovative minds from predatory leadership. There's something else, Knox said, pulling out an envelope. The board voted unanimously. Inside was a new contract. Chief Technology Officer, the youngest in the industry. This isn't just about me anymore, I said. It never was. You just made everyone see it. As Knox left, I walked to the window where Ethan had stood that night, trying to salvage his crumbling empire. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Somewhere out there were brilliant minds working late in labs, possibly facing their own Ethans, their own betrayals. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I'm a researcher at BioCorp. Thank you for showing us we don't have to accept this. I started documenting everything today. Then another. Your blockchain system inspired our university to implement something similar. Student work is finally protected. And another. My supervisor has been stealing credit for 3 years. I'm meeting with legal tomorrow. You gave me courage. I set the phone down and opened my laptop. Tomorrow. I had a presentation for the International Materials Conference. Next week, meetings with 3 more companies interested in implementing our transparency protocols. Next month, testimony before Congress about protecting intellectual property rights for junior researchers. But tonight, I had one last thing to do. I opened the security footage from that December night. Me, sitting alone at Meridian, surrounded by empty chairs and dying balloons. I'd kept it as a reminder, but I didn't need it anymore. That woman, brilliant but betrayed, had transformed into something more powerful than Ethan or Richard or even Marissa could have imagined. I deleted the file. Then I pulled up my research. The real work that had started everything. There were new problems to solve, new polymers to discover, new ways to turn waste into wonder. The lab was calling. And this time, I'd answer as myself. Not the girl trying to prove she belonged. Not the woman fighting for recognition. But the scientist who'd learned that truth, properly documented and courageously presented, is the most powerful formula of all. I raised my glass to the empty room, to the ghosts of that horrible night, to the woman I'd become because of it. Thank you, I said to the silence, meaning it. They'd tried to erase me, to steal my work and destroy my credibility. Instead, they'd created something they never saw coming, a leader who would ensure no one else would ever sit alone at their celebration dinner, watching their life's work credited to someone else. I didn't need their party. I had something better. I had justice, and it was perfectly documented. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate justice. I hope Elena's journey resonated with you. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Share where you're tuning in from so we can connect. If this story moved you, Please subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts. Have you ever faced a similar situation? How did you handle betrayal in your workplace? Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them.